This is Our Planet Radio.
Between 1995 and 2000, the number of prescriptions of psychotropic drugs of all kinds for kids more than doubled.
The problem with being a child in America today compared to 20 or 30 years ago is that if you are different, if you are agitated, if you are extremely active, you will fall under the gaze of the helping professions, the so-called helping professions.
I don't remember anyone I went to school with being on a mind-altering medication. But now, the number of children on drugs in this country is astronomical.
On the morning of April 10th, 2001, I remember waking up in the morning, about 6, my normal time. Didn't really feel very good, didn't feel like I was up to going to school that morning, so I thought I might, sleep in until about third period, which started around 11. So I set my alarm clock for 11 o'clock, and next thing I remember is waking up in the Juvenile Detention Center in Ephrata, Washington. What went through my mind when I first realized where I was, where am I at? What am I doing here? What happened today? What went wrong? They asked me if I knew why I was there, and I had no idea. I asked them what had happened, and they told me that I had taken a gun to my third period class and held them hostage for a number of minutes.
Welcome to Off Planet Radio. I'm Randy Moggins. We're going to talk today with Steve Richards, and Steve Richards has been on the show several times talking about treatments that he deploys shamanistically for the treatment of people with DID, PTSD, and the effects of psychological warfare. We're going to talk today about drugging, about the use of psychoactive pharmaceutical drugs, specifically on the children of not just the United States but around the world. We're also going to talk about the impact of external influences, specifically spiritual and multidimensional, why this is occurring now. And as Steve points out, this is the time of the harvest, the time of harvesting of souls. It's time to deal with these issues. It's time to line ourselves back up to the way the human biology, the human psychology, and the human spirit was designed to function. With my guest, Steve Richards.
Okay, so we were talking about the medications that are being prescribed, and I guess that goes into a whole area of what these medications are actually doing on the spiritual level, because that's what you're dealing with.
That's correct. Apart from many other areas, of course, but that's one of the areas we are dealing with, and that is understanding how we are actually a multidimensional being, understanding that we are actually a hologram of time. And every cell is a fractal of that hologram, which has memory stored within it. And what happens is that the hologram part of us, external part of us in the cells, is part of our soul, and it can be programmed. Now, what happens is it's part of the vehicle. You often hear people when they say, they've been drinking, and they do a range of all different things. It's not them. and they don't remember the next day, it's because someone else was actually driving the vehicle at that time. Now, what happens when you have the medication is it lowers this resistance within you. You know, recently it's interesting because one of the interesting things that happened recently, I was doing some research, and I came across over 25 sites around the world are these paintings on walls. And they're all the same type of paintings. And they're like a stick figure of a human. It's got a head, it's got arms, it's got a stick body and legs, but it's got two little balls of energy, both on the sides between the arms and the hips. And it's only recently that a scientist working with dimensions, you start looking at it in dimensions and photographing dimensions of this and realise that what it was way back in time, man had the ability to see energy fields around other people and things. And around the human was this torus field. And what the balls were was the torus field energy, two balls on each side, with these paintings all around the world that they could see. We have gone from this internal world of spirit and manifesting by rearranging our universe into the external world of manipulation of the soul. We've gone too far to the right. We've got totally away from the left. Cultures that were coming from the left and are aware of this spiritual awareness and energy around beings and trees and other things, they've done nothing but knock them, ridicule them, and then try to deprogram and program them into a modern day system way out here to the right. You know, I looked at this and said, well, who would want to make changes from the essence of a being to the manipulation of a being? And again, it boils down to the beings that are manipulating this world at a very high level. And we are dealing with another dimension that has been run this world in the beginning of time. I mean, you've got to go back and you've got to look at through time. You do with the Aztecs. You know, there was times where in certain days, towards the end of the last cycle, they ripped the hearts out of 30,000 people in one day. What was that about? Traumatising the spirit to trap the soul through time, because it gives them access. Look at the Inquisition. When you start to become a little bit aware in the Inquisition, what they do? Not only would they kill you, but they torture you. Why would they torture you then kill you anyway? To get you to submit. The moment you submit, you enter the game and they've got the soul for the future. You've got to understand that if they can traumatise the spirit, they can get access to the soul of the vehicle. And they can trap the vehicle through time. That's what this is all about. Now, the medication, this is about you can no longer can you manipulate, no longer can you run your vehicle. Your defences are down. And you're going to be vulnerable to other things that are going to jump in. They will then use that body, if they can, to traumatise the masses wherever they can, to again traumatise more spirits. Remember, this is the harvest. This is the time of the harvest. We need as many souls trapped in the game as one can for the future cycles of time. From these beings, that's how they're looking at it. Do you understand? The last thing they want is people to be spiritually aware of who they really are. Because the spirit is powerful. It can change the soul. The spirit is powerful. It can remove these forces. It can deal with these other forces that are coming through because they are violating law by coming into the space of another, by coming to a dimension they don't belong to. And there's these laws. I look at the people who are on medication right through time, and not just medication, but also any form of trauma is going to do the same thing. I mean, I look at your soldiers you got over there. I'm working here with special forces. I'm working here at times with soldiers from the Vietnam War. And at times I have spirits of Viet Cong speaking Vietnamese out of bodies as I unfold time and space to when he entered back in Vietnam. I take him out and instantly no more 40 years of trauma. You've got to understand the multi-dimensions of law and the laws of law. You're responsible for your thought, your word, your deed and your actions. But if by your thought, word, deed and action you harm another, then that will unfold back onto you because you can't escape the cycles of time. Now, if you go out and you kill another, you destroy his vehicle. Under law, the universe says, well, hang on. You destroy his vehicle, he can have yours. So he has a right to take your vehicle. Now, when he gets in, if he's, excuse the expression, pissed off, can you imagine what he's going to do? You get home, what happens? Shoots the wife, shoot the kids, blow your brains out, take you.
Yeah, exactly.
You understand what's happening with the soldiers? And they're not looking at any of this. Multi-dimensions. We are multi-dimensional beings in a multi-dimensional world, and we have to start to understand medication is not the answer. We have to understand how to deal with the cause of any effect. And the only person, the only thing can access the cause is your spirit. It knows how, where, when and why any of those dimensions that are part of your creation was created. It can indicate, send you there, and we can unfold time and space in that dimension. When we look at kids, look like a little 4-year-old kid, he wakes up screaming at night. He's in a cold sweat. Sometimes he'll sleep peacefully half the night. Next minute his body's jerking in the bed. Parents sleep with him. I went down to work with a young lad. So I surrogate the little boy, the spirit, into the mother. When he's back through time with the spirit indicator we need to go to, he's back in a past life. He's in England. He's a train driver, driving a train on a one-way track. Another train coming the other way. He's panicking trying to stop the train, head-on collision. His 4-year-old kid was killed on the train, a pile of other kids killed on the train. When he reached 4 years old, it triggered off the sleeper, which has been asleep. I'll explain that in a minute. He's now trying to stop the train in his sleep. Till we went back in time, we unfolded time and space, and cleared the dimension, he's now sleeping peaceful at night. Normally, that would be electric shock treatment under the system we got with these kids. A sleeper. They didn't teach you when you went to school that you cannot survive without 3 dimensions of time. You take 3 steps. Your last step's your past, your next step you're in now is the present, and the choice you make of what direction you go is going to be your future. If you didn't have 3 dimensions of time, you'd be frozen in time. Well, let's take a dimension. You die suddenly through a trauma, that dimension becomes in suspended animation within its own hologram, going nowhere. It's asleep. All it needs is a trigger. With this little boy, the 4-year-old, when he hit 4 years old, because his son died at 4, was a trigger. Now that dimension's alive in present day. The trauma is still online. It's continuing on its journey because it's never been cleared until you unfold time and space and clear that dimension. Our system is not looking at dimensions. Our system is not looking at the multi-dimensions and other dimensions out there. All it's looking at is let's dumb them, let's numb them, and let's see how many bucks we can make out of it. You talk about governments, in bankruptcy, I'll tell you now, the millions and millions and millions that they're putting into mental health. That could be assisting those people come back in the workplace easily and saving billions of dollars.
We're obviously talking about the people that you're treating who are very clearly people that need your help. I want to flip over to the other side for a minute and talk about every person on this planet has basically come into, my terminology may not be exact, but we're dealing with a matrix. We're dealing with a system where we have basically been thrust back into this world in a life form, and we are a product of previous lives and what happened between previous lives in terms of our programming. Each person on this planet theoretically has issues. How do we deal with that as normal, so-called normal walking about people?
The greatest key is what I call point zero. Point zero, you've got to understand we have action. Over here is action, over here is reaction. Action, reaction, cause and effect. But if I'm at point zero, I'm neither one nor the other. See, I cannot move through time and space into the future while I'm stuck in time. So while I've got action and reaction, I'm actually stuck in a dimension of time. Only when I get to point zero can I move forward through time. Now, the whole idea is, if we can get to point zero, non-reactive, and every time we do react, stop and ask, why am I reacting? What am I reacting to, and where did that come from? Because it means I'm acting to something I've redone before that I haven't let go of. Now, that trauma might have been as a little 3-year-old child. And ever since you're 3, once that's locked in the hologram, in the fractal of the hologram, it will reproduce itself through the cycles of time. Because what took place is that moment of time as the thought has now evolved to a thought form. It has now evolved to a life form. Now as a life form, it's reached a life form status. The tree knows it's a tree. The grass knows it's a grass. The dog knows it's a dog. The thought only knows the thought that reproduced it. So for its survival, it will reproduce it. In other words, you are the host. It has rearranged the universe for its own survival using you as a host. The moment we become aware, whoa, why do I keep doing this all the time? Where's that coming from? We spot it.
Right.
And we externalize that change and no longer react to it. We don't feed it. If we don't feed it, it can't exist. Because that thought form, once it becomes a life form, and once it understands you and your reactions, it eventually evolves to another level. And evolves to the level of the entity. Once it reaches the entity status, now we have compulsive disorder, multiple personality, bipolar, the schizophrenia, a whole range of other things, because the life form becomes the entity which now is taking over you. And when it surfaces, you've got no control. It's evolving. Everything's evolving from a thought.
Got it.
Now, there's external ones that can be invited in. If we have external ones that actually become in, we invite them in. And this is where I say to people, look, you've got two worlds, an internal world to an external world of manifesting realities, or the external world to the internal world. The internal world or the external world is you rearranging the universe to conform to your reality. The external world is disempowering yourself, giving power to something outside yourself. And I don't care what it is. Don't call anything in. Because the moment you call something in, you disempower you and give power to it over you. Then comes a manipulation of the programming of whatever that thought, whatever that thing is you've called in, it's now going to be manipulating you for its own agenda.
I would suspect that almost every person on this planet is dealing with this at some level then.
Of course. The human species has been manipulated since the beginning of time. This is about, right now, the end of this cycle is about the time of awakening. This is about the time of realising who we really are. And no longer allowing the programs and manipulations of the soul to continue on the manipulations by these forces. This is our world. Time we take back our world.
So your work is huge because I know you've trained people who are working with you, but given the number of people who would fall in the scale of being people who need intervention, we're dealing with staggering numbers, but really talking, as we've just talked the last few minutes, we're dealing with a planet that needs some serious triage and help dealing with their spiritual issues. So do you have like a fundamental? You talk about point zero. How do you recognize point zero? How does a person who's functional, walking about, able to cope on a day-to-day basis, get to a point zero? How do they sustain it?
Okay, there's two different types of people walking around out there. There's a few different types, actually.
Yeah, and I realize I use the term loosely, yeah.
Yeah, but basically, on the average, let's say, on the average, if a person is aware and a person seeking, first off is, there's these laws. First law is the law of intent. Second is the law of agreement. So, what's your intent and what's your agreement within you? Because if your intent and agreement is you want to make changes, then you've set the first action into play. And you speak about the first form of matter, from the invisible world to the visible world, starts to play into the visible from the invisible. You can now start making change in the visible. While you stay as the victim mentality, while you stay in the victim role, you will attract like, so therefore you will attract a cluster who will inline you and all the others around you of similarity, and you all start feeding each other off this bean up the top here that's manipulating the whole of you in the same game. Because like attracts like, and what you find is sometimes when people attract people of similarity, they feel part of something, cluster. They feel part of something.
Okay, so we're back to the cluster.
And get back to the reality of saying, whoa, I came here alone. I'm going to leave alone. I'm on a journey as a spirit. This is independent. This is about me taking back control of me. This is about me letting go of the programs I've been hanging on to. Where did they come from? And the moment you ask your spirit, sit down and relax. You'll have memories all of a sudden come up of maybe 2 years old, maybe 3 years old. And the moment you can look at those things, and you can let go of those things at that moment of time, and come back to point zero, realise, all right, and my thing is speak. Spirit, I no longer need those anymore. Clear them, please. Because it really is, our spirit is there for us. If we don't tell it, then it thinks we want it. It can change anything. Mm-hmm. It can change the soul. It can change the programs. It can change anything. Point zero. We don't keep focusing on it and trying to control it. The moment we focus and try to control it, we put resistance to it.
Yes, exactly. You're giving it energy, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. We have to really just, spirit, I no longer need that anymore. Clear it. Blow off your time track. It's really very hard because what we're saying here is we're coming forward with something which is so new and yet it's so ancient. I mean, 60,000 years of Aboriginal culture, this is how they lived. But over 150, 200 years ago, when they came and took away the children from the families, they created trauma. The whole trauma they created down the genetic line, today, we've got cultures, you know, I went to join one of the local community up here when I first came up on the coast 15 years ago. You know what the first thing they said to me when I went around to join them? Are you a Jehovah's Witness?
Uh-huh.
Not the slightest, thank you very much. Stop on the barriers. The church has totally taken over through the programming of their souls. You know, very few remember the past. Very few remember the old. And those that do are afraid because the church has programmed that they were evil.
Right. The church basically went in everywhere and took out the indigenous cultures and the indigenous spiritual systems that were actually dealing with this. And substituted a religious system.
And I look at that and say, okay, let's look at the reality. Why? Why? Because the Aboriginal culture was the closest being to nature there was. He was high in his spiritual content, high in his awareness. He could communicate to the spirit of the trees, the animals through the dream time. He could move in and out of time through what's known as a Burra circle. You know, I recently went over to UK and I was at Stonehenge.
Okay.
The moment I looked at Stonehenge, straight away I thought, one, done by the giants. Two, it's a tourist field. Yeah. It's actually a Burra circle. No, the same as Aborigines used to create Burra circles.
Yeah, no, it's totally desecrated now.
Yeah, it used to be to me a wormhole in and out of time. Just like the Aborigines could make, they had Burra circles. Put the rocks together, they could step in and out of time and move through time. That's, I believe, exactly what this was. Known in the past, forgotten, because of Western society.
So how does a Western person like myself, who does not have a shamanic background, how do we begin to access that dreamtime state?
Look, to me, it's not necessarily accessing the dreamtime state. It's accessing the acknowledgement, first off. If I acknowledge you as a person, you in turn will acknowledge me. If I walk down the road and look someone in the eye and I just nod, they automatically will nod back because of acknowledgement. If I acknowledge my spirit, it in turn is happy to acknowledge me.
Yeah.
Most people don't acknowledge their spirit. It's given them all the keys under the sun, but they're given all their power to things outside themselves. They're not listening to the inner being, which is their own spirit. So therefore, the spirit sits back and says, okay, you want to run the show? I'll keep my feet up, I'll lay back, you run the show, and when everything crumbles, then you call me. That's what's happening in people's lives today. They're not acknowledging their own spirit. Remember, this is a spirit on a journey. It took the vehicle. It's in a vehicle, and when the vehicle, it's like if I'm going from here to Brisbane and my vehicle breaks down, I'll take another vehicle. Well, if this vehicle breaks down, I haven't finished the journey, I'll take another vehicle. Do you understand? But it's the spirit who's driving the vehicle through time. Let's acknowledge the spirit for what it truly is, because it can rearrange the universe. I look at guys like Dynamo, Chris Angel. Yes. These guys who can walk through glass.
Yes.
These guys are creating their own reality. To me, I think there's going to be more people coming out in the future doing the same thing. I go back 40 years ago and longer. And when I first started doing what I was doing, look, I was doing mind magic and I was constantly saying, this can't be happening. This can't be happening. Because we're never taught it was. We're always programmed, this can't be done, this can't be done, the negativity into us all the time. So I kept on going down my research, but my research was I want to know more about the mind and what's happening in reality. I want to know more about mental health and what's happening with mental health in reality. What is a reality? You know, when I can throw a party and I can create what you'd call an illusion by make a tree grow in the middle of the room with oranges on it, and people pick the orange, eat the orange, remember how juicy the orange is, and people say, what's it like to eat something that doesn't exist? And these 5 people say, what are you talking about? I know what they ate. Well, normally that's reality. That's an illusion. Yeah. But to those 5 people, that was a reality. And that got me thinking, what is a reality? Because that was reality. It was only an illusion to those that weren't in that reality. So therefore we had 2 separate realities going here. Was a reality. So my research for 40 years has got to understand how do you access a reality and what is a reality? Because whatever's going on in the mind of a being is a reality for that being. That's where we have to find the cause, the effect of that reality, to make changes to that reality. And that's not what's happening under mental health.
Today there's a movement, and it's a movement back to shamanism, and part of that movement is rooted in some of the ancient rituals, mainly out of South America, that have to do with the ingestion of certain indigenous substances such as ayahuasca, peyote, things like that. And I wanted to get your take on this because there's a confusion here. We have a movement back to shamanism and reality, but at the same time, you're telling me these drugs are portals, they're gateways that open up things.
Listen, do you know how many clients I've had that have come to me that have been on ayahuasca or some of these other drugs? And, you know, I've had people that were running the courses bring them to me because they've been out of their tree, so to speak. Massive stuff. Yes, it does. Opens wormhole to other dimensions. Watch this. This is part of the laws of law. He who enters a dimension of another will be governed by the laws of that dimension. Mm-hmm. Therefore, you enter someone else's dimension, they've got a right to your dimension. That's it. Balance. Universe.
Yeah. Anybody that's done ayahuasca, peyote, any of these hallucinogenics knows that they've entered into a dimension of other beings who are extremely powerful and extremely territorial. And that's why I wanted to get your take on this, because I come across people who are advocating use of various hallucinogenic substances as therapeutics, as a way to attain certain spiritual levels. And I kind of know where you're coming from with this, and part of my job as an interviewer is to get it all out on the table. So I wanted to get your take on it.
Okay. Let's just go back to these beings again. These guys, they're masters of illusion. They'll be anything you want to get in, you know? Mm-hmm. No matter what it is. Whatever your thought process is, they can manipulate the thought process. They can be whatever you want to make you happy to get access. They need access. So therefore, once they get in, now what am I hearing? When a person's on the table, I'm hearing, one, I'm talking to the spirit of the being. Sometimes the soul drops in. I remember when I was 5 years old, that's the soul. Step out of it, not interested. Then the headspace, the ego will drop in. And the ego will start to run off and ramp and rave. But every now and then the life form inside the being will start to try to justify its existence, because everything seeks survival. A lot of the time I'm hearing life forms trying to justify why they are so good and why they should survive. You understand? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Everything seeks survival. If you give power to it, it doesn't want to die. It wants to grow and take over. So through these beings, they're going to justify why they're so good. Look, I've had people come in here, I'm not kidding, and they're away with the fairies, excuse the expression, but they're ramping and raving how good the ayahuasca and how good it is and how spiritually aware. And I'm not kidding. If you think you're spiritually aware, then I'd hate to be inside your body right now, because from outside here, there's no way in the world you are. You've got other things in there that are manipulating and running you. And you can hear it when they're talking.
So the only gateways to this aren't drugs, but other things as well. Let's just talk about it. Sexual practices. How do they impact people on the level of being spiritually entrapped?
Well, it depends again what we're talking about in that sense. You know, I mean, let's face it. Look at the obelisks, the most community centres, most centres. And look at the obelisk, the stone pillar. represents the phallic symbol.
Phallic symbol, yeah, of course.
Okay, so why? Have a good think about it. Why? And the reason why is that man can harness energy from nothing in this universe. And when man harnesses that energy through sex, and prior to the climaxing of sex, that's a massive amount of energy can be harnessed and actually be directed. But what can happen is other beings can come into experience and harness and utilize that energy for themselves in their dimension through the body. You see, we have an ability to manifest realities. We have an ability to harness energy, and that energy can be utilized if we know how to utilize that energy. But other beings also want that energy. Humans are a magic source of energy.
Right. This goes back to Aleister Crowley and the sex magic rituals that he was involved with as well.
Because Aleister Crowley, through occultism, and you've got to understand occultism. You draw your circle, put your pentagram in your circle, you create a torus field. You can conjure entities and other beings in, and they'll carry out your very command. When you have your rituals, these things will come through, and they'll make you feel high, real high, because they're giving you extra energy again. But there's a price. And the price is purely simply, for them to give you this, and what you want is to take over the soul. They want your soul for the future, and they got it once you enter the game. Unless you enfold time and space and break that again back in time. So, occultism is playing around the dark side and understanding when they use negative energies, in other words, other beings, for their own self-gain. Law, L-O-R-E, laws of law, is universal knowledge. Now, let's just understand this for a moment. As scientists, as a scientist, if you take a negative electron and you hit it with a positive electron, it actually creates a positron. And it spirals that negative electron out of this dimension back into a past that doesn't exist anymore. So, when you take positive and you override negative, you can actually change that dimension from existing. They're utilising powers because they are entering their game. The difference is know how to control your game. So you bring them into your game, you can deal with these beings. But you enter their game. Look, I got hit. I don't usually get hit. I don't usually hit what I'm doing, but I had a client 2 months ago, and the client sliced both his wrists. He's 26 years old. His mother brought him along. I walked into work on the guy, and as I walked into his field, bang! Whoa! I got hit. Whoa! Went outside, drink of water. Wow, this is big. I walked back in, bang, I got hit again. I walked out, another drink of water, okay, spirit, what's going on? And it said he made an agreement for the entity to take him out. You've got to enter the entity's game to get to him. Thank you. I now am aware what's taking place. But this is my game. I've got 3 fields around my house. Field around the room I'm working in, anything comes in here is going to get dealt with good and proper. Anything enters the boundary of my home, sets the agreements coming into my game. Any entity doesn't want to come into my game, stay outside the fence line, because the moment you come in, you get dealt with. So now I'm aware of what's happening. He's in my room. This is my game. I stepped into the entity's game, locked onto the guy's eyes, went straight in. I took out the entity. Do you understand how subtle it is?
Yeah.
He enters the game, another subject laws the game, and he'd made the agreement with the entity, so I had to enter its game to get to him. That's how subtle, and they're powerful. Some of these beings. My early days. I was thrown 30 feet through the air by invisible force in my early days. I landed on a couch. I said, okay, I'll get the hit, I'll wait. I wasn't afraid, I was fascinated. The guy was doing automatic writing. I was riding bikes at the time. I was waiting outside. So I walked in, I said, come on. I hit him on the shoulder, and as I touched him on the shoulder, I got picked up and thrown across the room by this force. Back in those days, I didn't realise what I was doing. Today I understand. He had made an agreement, integrated agreement, with this entity. I entered its game and it just threw me out of the game. Today I understand how to control the game. I teach my students how to control the game. I won't just teach this to anyone. If you've got people that are on drugs and other things and you start teaching them some of this stuff here, some big stuff can go down. I teach students that really want to understand what's going on to make changes, because this is very powerful. And you really understand the laws of law, but you can't understand the laws of law if you're taking drugs. Do you understand?
Yeah.
You can't be in two places at once.
Okay, so drugs interfere with the laws of lore.
No, sorry. The laws of law is first law is intent, agreement, and your free will. This is part of it.
Right.
You choose the free will in the drugs. You choose to enter their game.
Right.
You understand?
So it is an agreement.
Well,
it is an agreement at that point.
Without permission.
Okay.
To make changes.
Yeah.
Now this is the same. And look, we've cleared people. I mean, I had some woman come up. You won't believe this. Byron Bay. You get a lot of hippie type people down there, and she comes up and look. I took at least 8 or 9 things out of this woman, and they were big, bouncing around all the table. And when I'd finished, the first thing she says to me was, "Wow, I feel great, but that's not going to stop me from smoking dope. I smoke it every night. I want to smoke it again when I go back home tonight." And I said, "Well, what are you coming to me for?" I said, "Because you open the door and I'll be back in again. You open the door to these dimensions, and if they don't jump in, something else will, because they need the door to be opened through your free will. You go into rituals, any form of ritual, and you're opening the door by calling things in. Free will choice. Don't go and get cleared if you're going to call them in again, because I'll tell you now. I take you from the fishbowl. The fishbowl is the matrix where you see the fish swimming around in a circle thinking they're going somewhere. That's our society. When I take you from here out to the matrix out here, and we start clearing you on another level, you step from one outer matrix to another matrix. But each matrix you step out onto, there are bigger and more powerful forces to combat you. So if you go back to your drugs, once you're out of this matrix, you get hit worse than you were, because bigger beings on the next dimension. The whole idea is we've got to escape the matrix through the cycles.
Now the matrix, and I want to define this a little better. The matrix is both the dimensional aspect of our planet, our world, 3-dimensional plus 4th dimension, which is time. Is that correct?
Well, depends again on your terminology of it.
Okay.
To me, every created dimension is within its own dimension of time. Now, do you understand that? The dimension of time is from the moment it's created to the moment it's finished. But it can be for 1 second. It can be an hour. It can be a week. It can be a month. It can be a year. It can be 100 years. It can be 1,000 years. It can be a million years. It, in its own dimension, is still active through time. On our lineal time, as we look at lineal time, million years. But all it really is a dimension from its beginning to its end. The universe doesn't care. You want to hang on to it for 5 seconds? That's right. You want to hang on for a million years? That's fine. It's only from its beginning to its end. And it will keep surfacing lifetime after lifetime after lifetime until that dimension has been cleared that you're stuck in. Now, as for the matrix, you visualise a matrix, a grid system around this earth. But if you now go into radionics, in radionics and Aboriginal cultures, they can see a lot of people out there also can see the ley lines. And you've got this matrix grid, you've got these ley lines every 40 inches. Well, it's interesting because every 40 inches is a metre, which is 40. The Earth's biorhythm is 40 years of the cycle. So everything breaks down to the 4, which is the square, which is the change from invisible to the visible. So what takes place is that every 40 inches is a ley line. In radionics, gold might be at 37. It'll repeat itself now at 77. Every 40 inches repeats itself. So what happens on these different ley lines, they're actually like another matrix. Outside, layers and layers. When you fly in a plane, look at the clouds. They're on a ley line. They're on a level. I had a really interesting case. I was going to clear Rottnest Island. It's an Aboriginal island off Western Australia where Aborigines from all over Western Australia were taken imprisoned. And the elders called me in to clear the island because it was full of a lot of traumatised, we had thousands of traumatised spirits on there, which we brought through and we cleared. But at the same time I went to leave, the woman I was staying with, her daughter's apartment, 10 stories up in Perth, at 8:15 as I was leaving, the phone crashed, the computer crashed, the TV crashed. Everything crashed. So I said,
like my
okay.
Studio sometimes.
Well, I looked at this and said, okay, someone's trying to get my attention. So the next day I went back to the unit, we took a few of the elders back and went back and we surrogate the apartment. And a really interesting thing came through. You know, what happened was, well, two interesting things. One of them was that a group of Aborigines came through spirits and they said thousands of years ago, an alien race arrived and interbred with us. We want you to change time so it can never happen in the future cycles, which we did. Then all of a sudden, the surrogate said, whoa, never seen this one before. I said, what? He said, this is the thing that shut down the TV, the phone and all the communications. I said, what is it? He said, it doesn't have form. It's pure energy. Then I hear by command, wherever you are, come forward now. Next minute's talking out of him. I bring these strings and I'm talking out of the person on the table. I said, why did you invade the unit and shut down the phone, the TV and the computer? We didn't. I said, yes, you did. I said, why did you invade the unit and shut it down? Then he said, we were here first. And all of a sudden, instantly I got a flash. Oh my God. They're up here on a ley line. And this 10-story unit has come up into their world. And they said, we want it out. Mm. And I said, well, how can we do that? And what they said was, move the ley line. So I actually moved the ley line out over a golf course. Then I asked, is that all right? They said, yes. And we felt the change of energy as we cleared it. You've got all these different levels and different dimensions. Just because we don't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
So in terms now of my language breaks down in dealing with this at some point because I'm trying to stay kind of in your terminology. If we consider that we are in this dimensional plane, zone, three-dimensional space-time, we come into this at birth. We do not have knowledge of our previous lives or our previous programming, our previous conditioning, the between life, I'll call it torture, that is often performed on souls. How does a person coming in, incarnating, theoretically stay clear throughout their life? And I know that's kind of reframing a question I asked you earlier, but it's kind of important to me to understand what is happening on the soul level and what's happening on the spiritual level.
Okay, the first thing is recognition. Unless you recognize somebody, they're not going to recognize you. But the moment you recognize spirit, you recognize soul, it in turn can recognize you. So what we've got here is, first off, just say you in the past were a violent father to your children.
Okay.
Then, as a spirit, you're going to come into a vehicle that's going to have violent parents. So you learn by your own experiences of what you did to another. This is the balance. Now, what usually takes place is when you come into the violent parents, you don't like what's happening, so sometimes you will then create what's known as an altar. In other words, I don't like all this violence around me, so I'm going to create an escape university of reality. Beside me here becomes an altered reality.
Okay.
Every time you want out of that reality, you step into this altered reality. Now that altered reality, you can start to imagine whatever you can create, anything you want in that reality. And it's growing. But as a reality, it eventually becomes a thought form to a life form, and eventually it actually can take over your whole life as an altar, because you keep sliding into it, and now it's taken over, and you really step out of this reality totally down the track, because it's not in that reality, not in this reality. You chose to come here because the things you need to learn to bring back in the balance. The universe says, hey, listen, I couldn't care less. Whatever you've done, that was your free will choice of your experiences. But because you're responsible for your thought, your word, your deed, and your actions, how else will you understand to come back into balance to our universe unless you experience what you created? Then you'll understand that experience, and you may not create it again in the future cycle of time. It's all about balance.
Okay.
So you're choosing the parents, which is the soul vehicle through time you're going to come into for the experiences. But it's still the spirit through time, which can have its own trauma through time that's online.
Got it.
Got it?
Okay. And the reason I'm going over this with you a little more carefully is, even though we've done 2 previous interviews, those interviews were in concert with other people, and I didn't feel like I really had an opportunity to go this deep with you one-on-one. Because what we're talking about is taking responsibility for who we are and our actions on a level that, again, it was very difficult for me to understand. We come into this world, we have no knowledge of prior lives, we boom, hit this planet, we have all kinds of shit that hits us, we get really screwed up.
Going to stop for a moment?
Sure.
Where you said we have no knowledge of prior lives, your spirit is aware of everything in prior lives.
Conscious knowledge.
If I use hypnosis, then I access the past soul of the being.
Okay.
And you'll be speaking fluently. Just say you only know English. And just say you're in German in your past life. Mm-hmm. If I use hypnosis and access the soul, you'll be speaking fluently to me in German and tell me who you live with, who you're married, what's happening. You're there reliving the experience of that moment in time in the now.
Okay.
Just like your spirit will relive the trauma of the past through time of the vehicles it's had.
Okay. So we don't have conscious knowledge.
That's correct. Because the moment we come into the vehicle, first off, this is why Steiner education won't teach the child anything for the first 7 years. Because the first 7 years, every 7 years is a change.
Right.
The first 7 years is your spirit bringing the events through from the past and setting them up and experiencing and setting up what needs to be set up for the future. Now from 8 years old to 14, the second cycle is the programming stage. This is why the old Pope used to say, give me a boy before 8 and I'll give you a boy of God for life. This is why in the Sudan they're abducting children and turning them into boy soldiers. Because 8 to 14 is the second phase, the time of the programming of the soul. Now once the soul's programmed, you go to school. Sit down and shut up and speak when you're spoken to. This is about suppressing your spirit and programming external reality upon you that's not your reality. This is part of the programming of your soul. Now, once the program of the soul's in place, it sets up the cycles of similarity for the future. And there's your repeat patterns. Your prisoners in the system, repeating. I don't know why I keep doing the same thing over and over. People in our society, I don't know, keep doing the same thing over and over. They're stuck in time of the repeat patterns of the soul. Now comes more programming. It's constantly getting programmed. Every day you're getting programmed. And what we do, we fail to listen to the inner being, our spirit. And we let the programming take over. Our cells is now manipulating us.
So the purest essence for us coming in is that first 7 years of life. That is where we really are the closest to original nature. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct. And from that, you know, you take children. The amount of children out there today that remember past lives. And they talk about it. And the first thing the mother says, don't be stupid, that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Well, it's suppressive. In other words, I'm not listening to you, spirit, you're no good.
Yeah, you just basically forced me to concede my first argument that we have no knowledge of our past lives. Yeah. I now understand exactly where you're coming from with that. I agree with it. I've seen it. I vaguely recall it as a child, and I saw it in my own children. So, yeah.
Can you imagine if we had schools that developed this in the children? They're doing it in Russia. They're doing it in China today with the children.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. Somebody just recently sent me a bunch of information on this. Yeah. So we're working on it.
I would love to see a school set up to develop the spirit in the child. Now, Steiner education, as I said, it's children in its schools. It's about letting the spirit express itself for the first 7 years. And you look at those kids in Steiner education compared to other kids down the track, you see the energy of these kids totally different. You know?
Yeah, I've interviewed people who have been part of the Steiner, what is it called here in the U.S.? I forget. But the Steiner system, and it's superb. And it's really not based on this regimentation that we have in our Western culture. which is really basically ingraining the children into a culture that's as sick as the culture around them. I mean, look at us. We're drug-addled, we're at war, we're ruining our economies, we're killing people by the millions on this planet. So, I mean, again, it goes back to the level of sickness that I know you're dealing with the people that you work on, but on a mass scale, we're dealing with this on a planetary level right now. You called this the time of the harvest. What does that mean to you exactly? Is it an epoch, a cycle? Are we in a grand cycle in terms of the galaxy? What does that mean exactly, Steve?
Okay. To understand that again, and that is when you walk, you can't survive without three dimensions of time. The last step's your past, the one you now is your present, the next one you're going to take through your free will choice will be your future. Now, on the big scale of things, you have a past life, you've got a present life, and you will have a future life. Now, on the bigger scale of things, deja vu is the grand scale where it's happened before.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's happening now has happened before. Nothing new under the sun. The past and the present will now set up the future cycles of time. But if we're in the present and fold time and space into the past, we change the past, so the new future cycle, we lock in the new cycle of the future, then when the conjunction takes place in August next year, this year, I should say, we're there now, August this year, conjunction takes place, time will loop itself. Now to understand that, people are going all these imaginary things again, go off on tangents. If I work with a client and I unfold time and space upon a dimension, a lot of time that dimension disappears and they don't even remember they had the issue. They don't remember it existed.
Mm-hmm.
When time loops itself at the end of conjunction, you're going to be two things. Inside time or outside time. Inside time, Groundhog Day, it's all going to start again, just like it did last time. The universe doesn't care whether you get out this time or next time, it doesn't care. It's about the involvement of each being and where they're ready. And if you're outside time, then just like when we change time, we loop it, we give you a new time track. So when the time comes to conjunction, if you've cleared and you're ready to move the new dimension of reality, then you evolve in the next dimension of reality. Everything's about evolving. Everything's constantly evolving. Your thoughts are evolving. Everything in life is evolving. The hologram is evolving. But you can be stuck within that fractal of the hologram through time again until you finally deal with what you need to deal with. To make it more simply, if everybody left into the new future cycle of time with imbalances, we're going to have a chaotic world. So only through balance can a planet stay suspended in space. Everything in the cycles of time is balance. Every imbalance must come back into balance.
Yes, yes.
Each one of you as part of a fractal must come back into balance for the whole. If you want to stay out of balance, that's fine. Down the track, in the future cycles of time, you may be ready. Not everybody's going to be ready. Because there's new ones coming in, there's old ones going out, this is a continuous cycle of time.
Right. So really our goal then is to get into point zero and maintain that. And to stay in the now. Is that a fair way to put that? To live very much in the present, which is really, isn't that really the epitome of dream time anyway, of being in the present?
Well, it is. It is. I mean, there was a little bit more, example, like with the dream time, cultural-wise, dream time, the dream time meant through the dream time, I could sit down the dream time and, let's say the past culture would sit down the dream time by the fire. It would call in the spirit of the kangaroo or the spirit of the goanna, the spirit of the trees.
Mm-hmm.
And it could communicate to the tree, the goanna, and what happened, it asked for food. And the spirit of the kangaroo would donate its vehicle. The vehicle's in fight or flight. But the spirit donates. Next day, it turns up and there's your lunch. Because everything is done on this energy field through the dream time, you see? That's what the dream time was really about.
Right.
Through the communication, through the dream time of other animals and spirits in nature, communicating with everything in nature. So I got off track there. Your question, just come back.
No. That you actually went there, because what I was basically asking you is how do we connect? How do we reconnect? How do we stay connected? How do we not get into the tangents that take our minds and fracture us, assuming that we're functionally healthy.
Yeah. Well, that's it. The communication is to understand that we are a spirit. And as a spirit, we can actually manifest realities. As a spirit, once we communicate, we can tell it what it wants. It's there for us. It can rearrange the universe for us to give us what we want. Stop. Think. It's been giving you and everyone out there exactly what they wanted. The misery.
Yeah.
The problems. That's what they've been hanging on to. So it says, well, hang on, if you want to hang on to it, then I'll keep giving it to you because it's what you're wanting. It's a bit like, I look at it as being the waiter at a restaurant. And when you go to a restaurant, it comes out with a menu. You look at the menu and you say, okay, I'll have baked eggs for breakfast. Yeah. It comes out and delivers the bacon and eggs. Change the menu. Because your spirit's there to deliver what it is that you're hanging on to. It gets up in the morning and says, what's on the menu? Looks up at the screen and says, bitterness, bit of depression, bit of anger. Okay. So it'll set up again. Bit of depression, bit of anger for the day again. Tell you don't want it. Try and spot where it's coming from and make changes at point zero. Because all we're doing is we're not thinking, we are just responding to reactions of life forms that are within us. The moment we take that conscious decision to make changes, then the universe, the intent and the agreement will go into play, and the moment we speak it, we start to change the invisible to the visible world of reality.
Perfect. I understood that. That's perfect. That really, what you just said there was the nutshell I was looking for. I want to take a couple of minutes here before we end the interview tonight, because I know you have some things you want to share of current projects that you're embarking on and things you're going to be doing over the course of 2013 as well. You've been to the United States this past year, and you've worked doing training with people, and you also got a taste of what things are like here in the States. Share a little bit with us about what that was like and your observations and what you're looking forward to for this year.
Okay, well, it's funny because my first impression of coming to the States was landing in LA airport. And, there's something at LA airport, and it's the most depressing place I've ever been to when you look at it, and uninviting place you've ever been to. It's like, we don't want people here, thank you very much. But when I go to the East Coast, again, look, the people, I'm finding a lot of the people are scared. I'm finding fear in a lot of the people.
Yeah.
I was even told at cases, don't walk around there. When you walk downtown, don't look someone in the eye because they're liable to, attack you. Well, my thing is I always look people in the eye and I just nod and I always get a response back because I'm acknowledging the spirit of the person, you see. I found that, we'll go through New York and going through some of the other suburbs there, the amount of places I'm seeing that are, closed down, the amount of people that are boarded up and yet, I'm finding people living on cardboard boxes on the streets. To me,
it's insane, isn't it? Yeah,
it's insane. It's insane. Yeah. You got all these places boarded up, no one's living in, and you got people on the streets. It just doesn't make sense. That was one part of it. Two, I find that a lot of the people, there's a lot of programming. What I mean programming, let me be careful when I say this here. The soul is programmed into ways of thinking.
Yes.
The soul is programmed in many different ways and facets. I've found that there are a number of people that have taken on the assumptions and beliefs of programs. And there's a difference between assumption and belief. If you assume it to be, and you believe it to be, then because your assumption and belief, you'll instantly override your spirit. And it can't show you because it says, well, you're not going to listen to me because you've got your own beliefs.
Right.
So you've got to put the assumption and beliefs, you've got to take those aside so they can really get in and look at, let their spirit show them really what the keys are and what's going on there. I found that the crew we trained with, the crew, it was good. It was a good little crew there. I'm hoping to come back and do LA in a couple of months' time and possibly down in Colorado. I've had students down there wanting to set something up, and
they can sure use you in Colorado, as they could in Connecticut and a few other places in this country right now, Steve.
Well, my thing is, the more students I can train, the more they can be out there doing what we're doing and clearing up. That's really important. Apart from that, overall in America, I did find it's more than anything, I think, was fear. There's a lot of people in fear.
Yeah, especially if you go into a city, you're going to be able to. It's palpable. You walk on a city street, even the suburbs here, fear is everywhere. People are fearful. I sense it on a day-to-day basis. The spirit of fear is all over.
Remember, and while fear is in there, and you're focusing on this fear, you actually create it.
Mm-hmm.
You actually you're feeding the entity itself up here. You're feeding the cluster up here that's being created to create the fear. And the question is, where is the fear coming from? Has the fear been, programmed? Is it, okay. I look at some of the mind control stuff that's really going on through microwaves. Today they're using microwaves, today they're using light, and today they're using sound. Well, if you're gonna try and set up structures to control other countries, where are you going to experiment with it? Where are you going to test it?
Of course. Yeah. Your native populace. Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
And how many people have actually, subliminally, even knowing it, had programs through microwaves, through light, or through sound, through the TV, through the radio, through sound and subliminals through that, through microwaves over cities? How many people have been manipulated through their thought patterns by those processes? I mean, we know when they went to Iraq, first thing they did is start microwave towers all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And it's come out of the bunkers, that's what they were using. Well, where'd they test it all? And if so, to me, what I say is, the spirit has the ability to change the soul, and the soul is the one that takes on the programs. And remember, you look beyond who's doing this. Don't look at the military, don't look at the government, look beyond. Who's running those beyond? Who's dictating beyond?
Right. Right.
You look at your schools. I mean, let's face it, in your schools. Look at your universities right now. Your university getting millions and millions and millions of dollars. You know where it's coming from?
Research grants from the pharmaceutical industry, and I've had tenured professors at major universities in this country tell me that on the air.
That's one lot. But the other lot is, right now, there's like 40 million one university, 30 million to another, 20 million to another, coming from Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
To change the schooling system, to change and bring in, you don't want to know where your homegrown terrorists are coming from. You've got to have a look at some of the programming that's going on and where it's coming from. I'll send you some stuff.
Okay. Yeah, I think you just hit a vein that I'm not familiar with. The Saudi Arabia thing kind of took me, but I'm vaguely aware of the influence there. Quite honestly, we'll just look at the injection of fear we were given here on the 14th of December with the school shootings in Connecticut, and what proportion that's taken on in the national consciousness. People were terrified now of having their children in public schools, and well, they should, but those children are on drugs too. And you have a massive media campaign that's now aimed at basically funneling this fear into our living rooms through our television sets and our radios and our screens on our computers to do what? To traumatize
the spirit.
Yeah. Exactly.
To traumatize the spirit. That then leaves the defences down, so they're vulnerable now for the programming. Remember, they need to traumatize the spirit to program the soul. The moment you become aware of it, you don't take on the program.
Yes.
This is the key.
Exactly.
Awareness.
Yeah, awareness.
Of what's really going on.
Awareness. Yeah. So you have... You're traveling the world almost constantly, I take it. You're very busy. I know you do a lot of work in Australia and New Zealand and places like that. How about Europe? Are you working in Europe at all?
Look, at present, I've got people trained in 23 countries.
Good.
Most of those is either flown in here or flown in America or flown into UK when I was teaching, or flown in New Zealand to do it. And they want me to go to their countries and teach it because Once people experience and see it one-on-one, I don't like, I prefer one-on-one with students. I teach my students how to do surrogacy, but one thing about surrogacy is I've got the student on the table, the surrogate, I've got the practitioner, and I've got the client. Now, what does that tell me? It tells me I've got 3 spirits, I've got 3 souls, I've got 3 life forms, I've got beliefs and assumptions, and 3 egos. Whatever's attached to the client is going to be coming through on the table. Now, who does it belong to? Does it belong to the client? Does it belong to a belief system? Does it belong to a life form when it's coming through? Or does it belong to the student on the table who may have triggered off something of similarity? These are what I call the variables. To me, look, we're getting good results, but to me, there's variables. And I like to know, hey, Will, if you're on the table in front of me, straight away I can tell who's talking. Is it the spirit talking, the soul talking, a life form talking, the ego talking, or something else? I can tell straight away. Do you understand?
Yeah.
And I can deal with it there and then. If you're not on the table, then you'll lose other variables to take into consideration. And this is why my thing is, look, if you're on the table, one-on-one, you're getting results because we're seeing exactly what we're dealing with here, and we can make changes to those dimensions. But this is, again, this is only a tip of what we're dealing with. Let me just go into some of the other areas. As I said, you've got the thought forms, you've got the life forms, and you've got the beliefs. I'll give you some examples here. I had a woman come to me, she's got yelling and screaming going on in the head. In her reality, this man she's going to is attached, and it's attacking her. So my comment is, look, that's a belief. That's an assumption and a belief. No, it's not, she's saying, screaming her head off. I said, listen to me again. The effect is you have yelling and screaming in the head. The assumption is it's coming from this person. I'm not interested in your assumption. I want only the effect, so your spirit can give me the cause. But while you've got the belief in the assumption, you can override your spirit, because your belief will override it. Once we did that, and we got the beliefs out of the way, it took us straight back to 8 years old, a father and a brother screaming, yelling at each other. He's petrified. They created a thought form that evolved to a life form. 40 years later, it's evolved to an entity. We're still yelling and screaming at her. Till we took it out, yelling and screaming stopped. That's the thought form, the life form. Then you've got people out there with Tourette syndrome, barking like a dog and plucking like a chicken. If you kill an animal, you can take on that animal spirit. If you go past an animal dead on the side of the road and you feel sorry for it, you can actually take on that animal. Now what happens is, if you've got offences down, that animal will actually come forward and at times be enacting itself through you, and you've got no control. Now you get spirits invade bodies. If you kill another through time, no matter how many, you go back and you're at war and you've killed hundreds, you can have hundreds of spirits in you that are stuck in that dimension. Till we unfold space and time. But they can, when you have a few drinks, take over. And they can be reliving their trauma through you. Now we've got cases with road accidents. I've got a woman she's had 3 spinal operations. She's riddled with pain still. She comes to me, get her on the table. Goes back 18 years old. Next minute she's screaming hysterically. I totally forgot. What happened? Head-on collision in the car when I was 18. Thank you, what happened? The other woman died. Thank you. I checked, what have I got? The spirit of the other woman's jumped into her. She died of spinal injuries. The spirit's living the spinal injuries through her. She's had 3 spinal operations. The moment I brought the spirit up and folded space-time and released it, instantly all the spinal issues disappeared. They weren't hers in the first place. Many clients we've had with spirits that don't belong to them, living their trauma through them, including animal spirits. Then you've got, in nature. You can go through in nature and you clear areas, all the trees. Hang on, those trees are alive.
That's right. Yeah.
You're going to have trauma in that area, and you're going to build and live in that area where the trauma is. And you wonder why there's a lot of trauma going on in some of these areas? Think about it.
I've been in places where there was a sense of desolation, okay? It may have been a desolation in the soil, in the foliage around it, but I've walked through forests, and I've hiked forests since I was a little kid. I know the terrain. I know what the earth feels like here in my gut. And I've been in places where the earth cries, where it's grieved, where you feel it. There's pain coming out of it. And this is something that I don't think the Western mind has any sense of anymore. This attunement to the vibrations and the frequencies of our surroundings and how it impacts us.
Yeah, certainly. Do you remember the laws again? The laws of law. He who enters the game of another is subject to the laws of the game. You go into an area that's had trauma, you can actually take on that trauma because you've chosen to enter that area of trauma.
Yeah.
We go into communities where they like years ago, you could go and get an Aboriginal hunting licence. And you go for a quota for the weekend, shoot 3 or 4 Aborigines. That was a struggle in the past. So what happens is that we've got areas of genocide. And I'm called into many times in areas of genocide where those spirits are still stuck in the trauma as if it happened 2 seconds ago. We bring them through and fold time and space. We change the past and present to release those spirits for the future so it can never happen again in the future cycles of time. Trauma can be cleared in areas as well. Nature can be traumatised.
Yeah.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
And just understand that in those areas. You know, I teach my students how to bring a tree through and have it talking out of you on the table. As an animal, I can bring it through and have it talking out of you. People say, how could a tree talk it? Well, just imagine you're a mini miner and you've got a friend driving a semi. Got a set of lights, so they go drag. You take off in the mini and you're in and out of the traffic. Half an hour later, your mate pulls up, swap drivers. Now you're in the semi and your mate's in the mini. Okay. The semi was designed to pull 40 tonnes. The mini was designed to get in and out of the traffic. This body is designed to talk to me in English. When I swap drivers by bringing the spirit of the tree into you, it'll speak to me in English through your body.
Yes. Yeah.
It knows everything that took place.
Yeah.
Okay?
Got it.
It has memory.
It has memories. One other area I want to touch on with you is, speaking of nature and memories, is working with water. You know that water is a very heavy, it's very resonant. It both contains and can amplify sound and vibration. Have you had experiences working with waters, and have you used water in any of your healing?
Yeah, what I used to do, I don't do it anymore, because I short circuit so many things. But what I used to do is I used to get people, and when I finished my sessions, I'd get a glass of water and I'd get the whole of the water, and then I'd say, I want you to focus on the changes and focus on what you want for the future. Take a big breath, hold it, lock it in, then drink the water. Because it takes on memory. You can project memory into the water, and when you drink it, it then goes through the hologram.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
That was something I really wanted to ask you about. It was one of the questions that I had that I was trying to work in somehow today because it's something that I have an interest in. Steve, it's been really cool talking to you today and getting this information out. And we're going to post this show up along with the article that you had sent me, the video as well, and all your contact information. And keep us posted on when you're going to be traveling, especially when you're going to be back here in the United States or somewhere close to us. And we'll get that information out. And
I think that'll be March, February. We're trying for that and I know I've got to be back in April because I've been invited to talk at the Expo in April, also somewhere, but I'm not sure exactly where it is yet.
Well, if you're on the East Coast, hopefully I'll be able to make it. I didn't realize you were in New York the last time because I'm close enough I could have actually probably made that, but I'm looking forward at some point to being able to see you and meet you.
Yeah, it'd be nice to catch up.
It would indeed. Very good, my friend. Well, it's already tomorrow where you're at, but it's still today here, so it's a new year for everybody, and I wish you well this year. Steve Richards, thanks for coming on Off Planet Radio, and we'll be talking again real soon.
Thank you. Catch you on the track.
This is Off Planet Radio.